Hello, 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 everybody. It's Grandma, and I'm here to give you a little bit of history lesson on crochet pattern books. I did find a copy, and I printed it out, probably one of the first crochet books. Not the first, but one of the first. Because you have to remember, it's probably crochet books were actually started right around the 1840s. And there was quite a few different people that actually, this list, where's that my list? There's an actual list of some of the early crochet books. And is it this one? Yeah, like in the 1840s was the Lady's Complete Guide to Crochet. They think that it was written by Miss Lambert. So it was a crochet instruction book, and it featured the Irish lace. That's pretty much what I'm finding, is that a lot of people did a lot of the Irish lace, and that's like collars and stuff like that, edgings. That's where it all started from, crocheting. That's what it looks like, people. So basically, it's 1840s, 1844s was some of the first books. Another big, this guy here, however you say this, Regado de la Branche d'Hier, or whatever, however you say that person's name, he was one of, or she was one of the most famous ones that wrote crochet patterns, but it was mostly in Irish crochet, because that was what was the big thing back then, was the Irish lace. Let's see. So there's some books that was just anonymous, and it's all through the 1856, 1830s. These were the earliest books. Well, this book was one that you could buy, and I printed it all out, and it's from 1847. So this is one of the first, within like a window of like maybe 10-15 years, this was one of the first books. And it's interesting going through this. It's the Court Crochet Doily book. Now, when it says the Court Crochet, I was thinking like the Queen's Court, but I couldn't find any reference of Mrs. Warren at all to Queen Victoria. I couldn't find anything, whether she was in the court, or how the queens have their courts, their court ladies, and they sit around and they chit chat and stuff. I thought maybe she was part of the court, the ladies of the court, but I couldn't find any evidence of them knowing each other. They probably knew of each other, but nothing that stated she was known by the Queen. Nothing in person. So that's that. And this is some of the designs. 1847, you got to keep in mind. And these are some of the early designs of, when crochet just started to become a thing. Because before this, it was just the Irish women, the lowest of low, making, they're poor, they have a potato famine, and they're trying to make some money, so they just crocheted some collars for all the fancy ladies. And this stemmed from that, so they're turning what was known to be collars into works of art, doilies. 1847, which is beautiful. And I find it, designed by Mrs. Warren, it's so cool. And of course, this is London. And so she might have, I'm almost thinking, yeah, the Queen probably had one of these doily books, right? Because she was all into not just making collars, but she was into making you know, other things too. Crocheting scarves, blankets, and other art items. And I'm not sure what the reference of this is. The patterns in this book are all worked with Raworth's crochet thread, which is recommended for its superior color and quality. Entered at Stations Hall. Anyone know what Stations Hall would be? I'd be curious, because I love history, especially when it comes to the Queen. Now, this is the only thing that I found at all that Miss Warren would have said or mentioned the Queen, but nothing, you know, back to her. So it says, Her Most Gracious Majesty, Queen Victoria, the patroness of every useful and elegant art. This series of crochet books is dedicated with profound respect by Her Majesty's most dutiful subject. So I almost believe that somehow Queen Victoria got a copy of this book because of this. This was in this book. So, you know, she's saying, you know, welcoming everyone to a new series. This introduces them. So this is probably one of the first of her series. But what I found very, I don't know what it is now, but I know from just hearing that a double crochet in Britain is like our single crochet. But I have no idea if in Britain a long stitch, when I read this, it sounded like America's double crochet. Long stitch is made by first twisting the cotton over the hook, then inserting the hook into the loop, draw the cotton through 2 loops, then again through 2. There will be then only 1 loop on the hook. And that's, to me, sounds like a double crochet. So I thought, you know, the way that they wrote the patterns back in 1847, I thought was really cool. In working these patterns, every care must be taken not to turn the work, but commence each row at one end, and at the termination, cut off the cotton and begin again. So that's odd, isn't it? So you work the whole row, and then you cut it off, and then you go back and start again at the beginning. So you're not turning your work back and forth. Interesting. And of course, then they get into the actual pattern. And when I read this, you know, I would really have to be careful when I'm making this, because I'm going to want to think in the American standard crochet, and this book does not follow the American. It was before, I think even before, long before probably anyone in America was doing crochet. So, you know, these patterns, I would really have to pay attention to what it was said on the first page about the stitches. And when it says turn back, I'm sure it doesn't mean turn. It means start from the beginning again, right? Work one long. One long would be an American's 1 double crochet, 1 chain, miss 1 loop, and repeat. So one day I want to experiment and try to do a doily from this doily book. I think it would be interesting. But this is the early crochet books. Probably, you know, like I said, within the first 10 years of patterns for crochet, you know, and now, like I said, in London at the time, and probably still, a DC stitch is a single crochet. So it's quite interesting. 5 long would be 5 double crochets in America. As 14th row, Commence at center pattern, but not at the termination of the last row. 4 long, the first and the second long in the last row. Chain 6, double crochet on double crochet, 6 chain, 3 long, the first on the second long. I would have to rewrite this out to try to make the pattern, right? Yeah, because it's written totally different than what we know of as a pattern today. But this is just page after page of different patterns, doily patterns. And this is doily number 2. And I'm sure at the beginning where they were showing the pictures, you know, like this is number 1 and this is number 2. So this pattern would go with this one. Doily number 2, number 2. So at least you would have a picture that you could possibly look at, you know. So first row, make a chain of 21 loops. So it's probably right, oh, I don't know. It's not starting in the circle, is it? So it's a chain of 21. And then turn back, work 3 long stitches into 1 loop, 1 chain. 3 long into 4th loop. We would really have to figure this out, people, if we was to make one of these. Might be interesting, right? Might be interesting. Might very well be interesting. But there's a few. If anyone was ever super interested, they are out there if you want to make something from way back when. That would be like, wow, like 175 years ago. Can you imagine that? Making a doily from 175 years ago? Insane. And through the years, you know, patterns have changed. Patterns have changed. You know? But the Court Crochet Lace and Edging Doily and Collar and Cuff Books, dedicated to Her Most Gracious Majesty. Pretty cool. I like that. So there you have it, people. One of the oldest doily book that's may not be in print today, but you can go back and get patterns. Now, I just brought these along just to go with the history. This was a crochet book. It doesn't have the date, but because I have some that are like number 26, now, you know, because each book has a different number. And this is my earliest one that I found in my stash. These books belonged to my mom before she passed away. I was able to get a few of these books, and now I just treasure them. But the first one I have is number 17, and I don't have a date. But, like I said, number 26 was dated November of 1983. So these are pre-1983, so maybe 82, I'm guessing. And as you can see, it's totally changed. You know, even this, from what I know of and what the patterns that I go by, is totally different from these. And this was such a big thing that was starting out when years ago, and I like going by the words. And I keep telling myself, one of these days, you know how what Pa Kettle said back in the early 1900s, one of these days I'm gonna do that, or I'm gonna fix that. Well, one of these days I'm gonna make me a doily from one of my mom's books. But these are also, you know, let's see, how old are they now? If, let's say 1980, these are like 20, 40, 45 years old, you know? 45 years old books. And crochet flowers and put them on flowers. But look how interesting all these are. I've shown these books before. I'm just showing you the difference from what it was like 100 years or so prior. You know, it's come a long way in 100 years, let me tell you. So now let's look at a book that was from the 90s. Those are from the early 80s, much early 80s, and then 90s, you know, 150 years, you know. Look at that. A nicely written out. It's in American. I don't have to get confused. It says, with off-white chain 206 loosely. 206 loosely. Single crochet and second chain from hook, place marker around the last single crochet for round 2 joining. I mean, to me, we definitely came a long way in our pattern books, you know, as far as writing patterns. You know, it's totally changed, totally changed. And even from the 90s, this is well into like 2020. You have this book that shows you the how-to before you even get into, you know, making the actual, in this case, it's the bag, you know. So it's changed quite a bit. It's telling you take 2 scans of medium 4 weight. You know, it's turned it into something very easy to make, you know, something. And in this case, this is a book on bags, and it's showing you just how to do it, you know, in nice, bold, colorful pictures. We've come a long way, people, haven't we? And look at, it's, you know, everything's broken down, so it's not all these run-on sentences and stuff. So very simplistic. And here we got that granny square that Queen Victoria was working on. You know, she would probably think that was pretty darn cool to have a purse like this now, a bag, because she was one for carrying bags. Back then, all ladies carried their little bags, their little pouches. A lot of it is because they didn't bathe every day like we do now. They bathed once in a great while, maybe once a month. So you had your little pouches of perfume powders and stuff like that, so you smelled good. And if you start stinking, you just went ahead and just, you know, patted yourself down with your powder, your perfume. So yeah, nowadays it's so simple. Single crochet in each stitch across row, chain 1, turn. You know, very easy for us now to do crochet. You know, very easy now. And nice, vibrant pictures to show the work. So that's a little history lesson of crochet books and patterns. We've come a long way, I'll tell you. Some of this pre-1800s is very interesting as well. Some of the things they did, finger looping and slip stitch cord. You know, they would make decorative trims and laces made by hand without tools. They used their fingers. The word crochet, it's French for hook. In the late 1700s, used for tools and lace making. By the 1800s, it was referred to as the craft itself. So the French for hook is crochet, so that's where crochet came from, people. French for hook. Isn't that cool? That's crochet's roots. I also saw somewhere else that there was some, and I can't remember what country, but the fishermen used a tool that was similar to a crochet hook. They didn't call it crochet, but because it was pre that, that's what they made. They made fishing, what do you call it? The fishing, what's that word I want? Fish, not fishing lines. It's that big net, a fishing net. that they would throw in the water to catch fish that way. That was, they claim, was probably the earliest crochet form of any kind, because they did use a tool that resembled a hook to make those. So there's always that. So, but crochet never came to be until really the 1800s. So there you go. And this is probably one of the very first pattern books. Not the first, but one of some. And look at that, the price, 6p. I'll tell you what, the price isn't that anymore. What if the price is on this? Yeah, I'm not seeing a price. I know it's much more than the price that's on these books. $2.50. I wouldn't have expected $2.50 even in 1980 for a crochet book, but yeah, it's $2.50 there. 100 years prior, it was only 6p. And it was probably a lot more work that went into making this book than it did for that magazine there. A lot more work. Can you imagine trying to print all this out at a printing company? They did all that by hand. Putting in all those letters. Woo! But yeah. So I really love this book too. I'm going to put this in its own little folder so I have it, and put it with all my old crochet books. Well, that's what I have for you today. This video is going to have an asterisk. So if you watch this video to this point and there's an asterisk and a title, that means the asterisk is a form of make a comment for your name to go on a wheel for a prize, because we made it to 500 subscribers. So if you made it to this point, go ahead, like, subscribe if you haven't, and put your name, put something in the comments so that your name can go on the name of wheels, the wheel names, and you could possibly win a gift. Let me say that it's a bag, and in that bag, crochet bag, is going to be some fun items for crocheting. So with that said, remember, keep an eye out for the asterisks, people. Bye-bye. Gotta go. Gotta run. I'm being called for. Bye-bye.